everything better. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Well, I'll just leave that. Our guest today is JThorn. We're going to be talking about collaboration, just generally collaboration. And but first, who's got something cool that doesn't? Well, I'll stop there too. I got shit I want to say, and I won't. So go ahead.
Johnny, would it help if we, because I know you've been trying to talk.
It would help if there was any other software for conferencing but this bullshit.
Well, would it help at all if we recorded, because I know you've been wanting Dave forever to do a worst show ever. And if Dave doesn't want to do it, maybe we just get on and you bitch about Zoom. Just like everything.
That'll be fun.
Everything you've ever wanted to say about Zoom or Zoom's mother, like last week.
No. There was like one episode of Worst Show Ever where Dave wasn't around and I said, I got to rant. And I listened back. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing with anybody but Dave rants. It's just like, who are you, you amateur?
Yeah, it is like playing against LeBron. It's just, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
All right, so Johnny, do you have something cool?
No.
Oh. Wow, all right. Wow, Zoom really hurt me.
It knocks me off kilter. I can't. It takes me a while to get back into it.
Okay.
You should see the foaming at the mouth that happens over here before each show now.
My personal something cool is that I now have a graduate of high school, which is kind of crazy amazing. Not that there was much of a graduation, but theoretically, and
the graduate is something cool. I'm thinking the graduation was not something cool.
No, I told her to not watch The Graduate because it's probably really boring. And that I was bored when I saw it. Like
I meant your graduate.
Yeah. So let's see. There was something. Oh, Chernobyl. If you haven't seen Chernobyl.
The event?
Chernobyl is awesome.
You're horrible.
Do you guys want to go there?
Oh, fuck you. Yeah, Chernobyl on HBO. We watched, and it was really, really good. Especially, I mean, it's 5 episodes, and it's a limited series. I don't think there will be a season 2 of Chernobyl. But season 1, or the limited series, is really good. And it's the first 4 episodes kind of tell just the story of what happened from the minute there's the meltdown and for like the first 9 months, I guess, until there's hearings about it. And then the final episode is like what actually happened, because Russia didn't want to admit what happened. And it's just a really, really well done story. And Johnny, it's written by Craig Mazin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really good. It's one of those things. It is really, really great, but on IMDb it has a 9.6 out of 10 stars, which seems a little high. Like, it's really good, but it's not 9.6. But it is really great. It's worth watching. Absolutely.
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave.
I don't have something cool. I have something I want to bitch about. It was something cool.
No, okay. I see a trend
we're
here.
all warm for this. This is good.
Okay, so I just want to say, and I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen the show. But I just want to say what I hate when TV shows do this.
I'm already so excited.
You have a hero and he's trying to protect his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, and there's this huge battle, and the whole show has been like leading up to this big fucking finale, and both of the guys are just total badasses, and if you think the fight's over, it's not over. So you just gotta when you finish the bad guy off, you don't ever turn your back on them ever. Why do they fucking do that in all these movies and all these TV shows? Because the guy you got a fucking knife right through the fucking head, chop the head off. You do not wound someone and leave them there, because they will get up and then kill your wife or girlfriend.
Austin and I watched Halloween this last Halloween, the original like 78 John Carpenter Halloween. And I know that this is a while ago, so, it hadn't been done to death, but like the trope, like she I think she just knocks him down. I don't think she like knifes him in the throat or something.
Right.
And then she like turns away, and in the background you see the room with Michael Myers lying on the ground. And she's like on the phone, just hanging out in the house, like not
How you
leaving the house at
doing?
all. And it takes a really long time for him to sit up and come over. You're like, what the fuck? Who does that? Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I fucking hate it, and because especially since the people in this show, I mean, they get wounded a lot and they somehow come back from it. You should know. You should just fucking know. It was such a perfect show up until that moment, and at that moment, I was like, "Fuck you, TV show. Fuck you. I hate you."
Okay, will you please slack what TV show this is, because
It's the one I've been talking about to you.
You know, I heard in the new season of everything, the climactic battles are going to happen on Zoom. Like somebody's going to wake up and no, don't turn your back on the monitor.
All right, I know the show.
So I just want to say, if someone were to ever battle me, and I knock them down, I am going to make sure they're down for good before I turn my back.
There's going to be all these people around. Shouldn't we get an ambulance for that guy? No, he's going to get back up. He's going to get back up. Dave, come on, nobody look away. Dying, he's bleeding out, but we got to wait.
Dave, I'm just curious, do you have odds on whether you'll ever actually stab somebody?
As if it hasn't happened before.
Yeah, like would you put it at 50-50, 90-10? Like I have no
like
idea.
Per day?
No, just in your life, you're going to stab somebody to defend your family, your cookies, something. What?
I don't like to tempt fate, so I'm not even gonna say. Somebody just wrote Joel versus Dave cage match. No, I would lose that shit. Joel's a real man.
That's not even a cage match. That's a cage stomping.
I have anger and insanity, but I think Joel will probably outmatch me on all of those things. So.
Dave stabs people instead of Christmas tips. Like, that's what you get.
What? Hello.
Oh, hey, look at all right.
Hey, Jen, where you going? Where are you driving?
Jen's driving. All right, guest appearance. You remember how that used to happen on that one service? Like random people would come in. You were like, "What the hell's this?"
Yeah, it also happened for a while on. It happened for a while on Google Hangouts too, where like people would just randomly pop in. It was the weirdest thing.
This is the most professional show ever.
All right, JThorn, what's your something cool? You have anything?
Oh, I didn't realize this was. I'm in the
No,
wrong
you don't
Zoom.
have
I just popped in here randomly and saw you guys. Yep, my something.
But
cool,
I was on Omegle.
Yeah, I started watching White Lines this week, and I'm not too deep, and I'm not deep enough into it to know like if it's story wise if it's any good. But I do know that I need to get myself an island in the Mediterranean so I can host big orgies.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So that was a revelation I had this week.
So are there a lot of orgies? Because I've noticed Netflix has been moving into the orgy territory lately. The Witcher had a lot of orgies.
There is an episode 1, I can tell you that much.
All right then.
I have a spec script that's going to be so good on Rotten Tomatoes. It's called Chernobyl Orgy. Don't you steal that, Jay.
I won't, promise.
Dave keeps getting Chernobyl and Caligula messed up.
Chernobyl Caligula.
I did have something that was more like something ambivalent because I'm not sure if I actually really liked this, but I thought it was interesting.
Oh,
so
I want to hear something ambivalent.
Something ambivalent is
That should be my feature.
I feel like Sean, I feel like maybe you would have seen this preview. It wasn't a big movie at all. At the Alamo, I know I saw the original preview for Come to Daddy.
Oh wait.
With it's with Elijah Wood. And he has a little porn stash.
Oh,
no, weird. Did you not see that preview?
Oh yes, I did see that preview.
He goes to find his dad in the woods. He lives living in this isolated house.
Yeah, it's like by a lighthouse or
shit
something,
going
right?
on. Yeah, and I don't want to say anything beyond that because there's some pretty major spoilers. It's one of those things that's hard to just even describe the movie, like the way the movie actually plays out, because it would spoil it. I don't know if I liked it, but I liked what they tried to do. Like I liked the mood of it was very, very interesting. The choice to have Elijah Wood as this really awkward dude looking for his dad. He has some serious daddy issues, and
is Willem Dafoe the dad, or am I just remembering that wrong?
No, it's not Willem Dafoe, but he looks like Willem Dafoe.
Oh, okay.
It's like a William Dafoe impersonator. You can hire him for parties.
So it's Willem Dafoe bootleg?
Yeah, it's like when we saw that Upload movie, and it wasn't Tom Hardy, but it looked like Tom Hardy.
That's so weird that you just mentioned Upload, because when you just said we saw it at the Alamo, I thought you were going to say about Upload, and I was going to think that was your something cool, because I just read this morning that Upload is got picked up by, because Blumhouse made the movie, and they're doing a TV
Upgrade.
show. Upgrade. So there's going to be an Upgrade TV show that instead of a sequel, but same premise and everything, same world.
So anyway, but it's one of those styles. I don't know that it's Blumhouse, but it has very much has that feel. Like it just, and it was amusing. So there you go. There's mine. All right. So you guys want to talk about collaboration? We were joking about having like show notes for this one. And well, actually, okay, hold on. Let's be professional first and introduce our guest. But because we're not actually professional, let's let our guest introduce himself. So JThorn has been on a few times.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
We've sort of worked tangentially with him. We orbit in a lot of the same circles. A good guy. I used to have lunch with Jay every once in a while when I was living up in the place which shall not be named. So what do you have going on right now? You're always hustling, always doing something different. It would be hard to even pin you down based on what I know from the past anyway.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do a 5-day writing challenge, but I thought first, like before I get into that, I went back and looked, and self-publishing podcast episode number 49, which aired in 2013, was my first appearance on your show. And the title, do you guys remember the title?
Oh,
Collaboration?
We were better with things back then.
It was Hacking Your Book's Formatting with JThorn. So you are welcome for that evergreen content, by the way.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That one's really held up well.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I know. It's been a while. I mean, shit, it was 2014, I think. We were at Kukril's AMC Live in that place that Johnny doesn't want to name. It's hard to believe, man. Like I started watching some of this video from on YouTube, and all of us have a little less wrinkles, a little less gray.
Hey, fuck you. I look better.
Yeah, I mean, that episode held up like the Lawnmower Man.
Hey, don't you knock Jeff Fahey.
Jeff, okay, well, I got to rant there too. All right, so
wait, you have a rant about?
No, not a rant. That dude is just never in good movies. Like there's just something about him. It's like they hire him when they need somebody in a bad. And I don't even think he's bad. I just think
I liked him.
So do I. I like him too.
He's got a bad agent.
Yeah, he does. He has a bad agent. Hey, this movie's bad. Okay, put Jeff in it. Okay, so 5-day writing challenge that's like something you're doing.
Yeah,
that's not what you're
now.
doing globally.
No, what I'm doing globally is, well, I mean, really since last time I think I talked to you guys, I've really kind of pushed hard into collaboration and education. And those are kind of two things that have been a part of my life for a long time. So I have author and client services. I got StoryGrid certified. Zach Bohannon and I run author trips now. And we just finished off the Career Author Summit. So we're doing a little bit bigger events. So all of that, and I've added a few more podcasts. I tend to be a podcast junkie. So it all comes back to collaboration, working with other people. And,
how many podcasts do you do, Jay?
I do 3 weeklies and a monthly.
I've been on a few of them. I know that.
Do you want to rattle them off?
Yeah, I do. I do the Career Author with Zach. That's weekly. The other 2 weeklies are the Writer's Well with Rachael, who you guys had on recently. Lovely, lovely woman.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, my newest one I just started late 2019, early 2020 was with JD Barker, and it's called Writers Inc. And it's mostly interview-based podcasts.
Cool.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about collaboration, which you've just demonstrated. That's what you're doing. It's obviously something that we've been talking about from go. It is such a big topic that it's one of those ones where I kind of don't even know where to begin again. So I'm hoping that Sean will go, I know where to begin. But I mean, that's always been sort of the secret sauce that we've pitched and talked about. If you don't like collaborate directly with somebody, as in creating like a book together, you're collaborating in one way, shape, or form with other people regardless. You're collaborating with a cover designer, with an editor, with the developmental editors, that sort of thing.
Well, I think a place we can start is I mean, we know the glories of collaboration. We talk about it all the time. It's how we run our business. I mean, entirely. What are the mistakes? Like, right along the way, if you collaborate with a lot of people, then not all those collaborations work out invariably. So what are the things that we learn along the way? That might be an interesting way to do it, because I think there's two things we can really cover in the conversation that'll help the most people. And that's, how do you find collaborators? Because that's, everybody asks that. Where do I find a collaborator like Dave? Well, actually, nobody wants a collaborator exactly like Dave. But
your local zoo, perhaps like a bear den.
Right. It's not that you want you want a collaborator like Dave. It's that you want a relationship that's close in the way that Dave and I are close, or Johnny and I are close, or anyone I collaborate with, where, you know, it's a fluid understanding of, like an agreement. And you have this unspoken or written contract, depending on your collaboration, that this is the art we're going to make, and this is how we're balancing our art with our commerce, you know? And so not all, that doesn't always work out. So what are some of the stumbling blocks that you come across that are just like, oh yeah, I wish I knew that?
Yeah, that's even a tough question, because there are certain red flags that will pop up for me personally, but then there are sort of bigger issues that I think are important to think about. So like the three of you, when you guys started working together, you were all pretty much the same age, kind of in the same family space as far as like, you know, where you were and what you were doing. Like, do you think that was a factor at all in your ability to kind of work together for so long?
I think that more similarities means more points of common interest. So if you think about like, if you go to like a party back when parties existed, remember that?
No.
You know, you could just kind of get in a conversation with somebody, and it actually is kind of funny because Sean and I have attended a lot of things, and we'll get intro bombs. So it's like, hey, you two should talk, boom, and then you're stuck because whether you have anything to talk about or not, you've just been assigned, and you're going to be rude to walk away. So this would be a case where you kind of have to fish. Well, do you like tacos too? And, you know, you kind of like, hey, what do you do for a living? And what that is that's fishing for common. I mean, I was joking about the tacos, but you're fishing for commonality. You're fishing for like, what business are you in? Oh, I do that too. I saw that
Sometimes
series.
people ask if you want to hear their story about the first time they time traveled.
That's actually a really good one. But you're looking for commonality. And then once you have commonality, then you can kind of expand it outward, because there's a sense of like, this person's like me. They're not totally dissimilar. We can relate at least on this one superficial level. And so I think that to answer that question, the fact that we already were approximately the same age, we both had, we all had, all three of us had kids. We, you know, we're all married. We all don't want to see TV with our family. Oh wait, that's only one of us. And then that just makes it easier to do everything else, because you've got that common base.
I would also add that Dave definitely catfished me.
Well, that's what you get for stealing my website.
Yeah, I do think, of course, like Johnny said, touchstones make a big difference. So yes, absolutely. That did play a part in it, but there's a spectrum within our company, right? So, I mean, we go from 30s to 70s. So, you know,
don't we go from 20s to 70s? Do we not have any 20s left? We lose our last 20 something.
We don't have,
we did like a year or two ago. We had 20.
Yeah, but we have something on the way there. So we are going to span the spectrum.
We're going to start where now our next recruit is now 6 months old. You guys just wait. It's going to be great.
So
we're trying to keep Dave from killing it.
I think we can get along with, you know, everybody, and anyone can be a good collaborator. But before, we were really thinking in you know what? No, I'm going to actually say, going all the way back, at least for me personally. No, one of the people in our company now, Danny, we still actually work with him, and like on a very
he's like 12,
basis,
isn't he?
He's an important part of our company. No, but he was 17 when we started working.
Right.
Right. And I met him like 2 weeks after I met Dave. I've known him almost the entire time I've been online, since I was writing with Writer Dad. And like we still, like, I'm stupidly loyal. Like I love the fact that I'm working with two people that I met so long ago. So he was 17 and, you know, lived a continent away. So no, I think I'm just really collaborative by nature, and I'm always looking for people to make me better or smarter in some way, or contribute something that I can't. And if I know that I have something to contribute to them, that really drives the relationship. But I don't know how normal that is too.
Yeah, I don't know either, and every collaboration is different. Where I see some disconnect with people is that, you know, you have one author who, say, has a couple books out, writes on the weekends, has dreams and aspirations, and they think they're going to collaborate with, you know, an upper mid-lister who's making 5 figures a month on Amazon. Like it's not realistic. Or they find a cousin who, like, you know, used to write for the high school newspaper, and they're going to collaborate with them. And I think when you're first starting out and you're first looking for a collaborator, you're eliminating a lot of potential pitfalls if you can find someone who kind of has the same expectations. Maybe that's more, maybe it's expectations are more aligned as opposed to, you know, age and socioeconomic status and that sort of thing. But because it's hard, like if you have one person who really wants to drive hard and another person who doesn't, that's a hard disconnect to get past in a collaboration.
Yeah, for sure.
I think too that, I mean, I don't know how deep I want to go into this, but I actually, when I've told the story a few times, when Sean and I started working together, or no, when we all started working together, and I saw Sean and Dave working together. So this is me coming from the outside as a solo. I was like, wow, I wonder how two people collaborate together. And it was just like so foreign to me. And then Sean and I started working together, and then in the way that multiplicity happens within this sort of company and sphere, like suddenly we were kind of working with other people, and obviously with Dave right away, but in a limited way. Like I've never written with Dave, and then now we have this whole studio. And so what I realized, spoiler alert, is that I got to the end and I said, oh, you know what? I was right the first time. I'm actually not somebody who collaborates easily. I think that Sean and I have a unique collaboration, and in a very different way, Dave and I you could say we had a unique collaboration and that we work well in this podcast. So acknowledging that collaborations can have a scope or a limit or various, like collaborate well in this circumstance with this person, and it may be different for another person, another circumstance, is something to keep in mind, because you know, it's been, how long have I been working with you, Sean? Like 8 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it took most of that time for me to come back full circle and realize, oh, I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I actually am not as collaborative as I started to believe I was.
Just because you collaborate on one thing doesn't mean you can collaborate on everything. And Dave and I learned that first, but I didn't apply that same lesson to Johnny, because primarily Johnny is so much more entrepreneurial than Dave by nature, that I thought that meant he was all the way entrepreneurial, and it's not. It's different. And so
well, I'm all the way entrepreneurial, just not in the same way as you are. So I actually think, because I've thought a lot about this, because this has been something that it was a surprise. Like I spent more time feeling that I was suddenly a collaborator than thinking that I wasn't. So it took some convincing to go, oh, wait, maybe not. And I think that, so for instance, this is the best analogy I've been able to come up with. So in the past, when I've had like work done on my house, there's a general contractor, and then there's, you know, subcontractors, and I'm really good at telling them what to do and making sure they do it. So like, well, hold on a minute, I thought you were going to paint that section. That didn't get painted. And, you know, and then, well, how should this be done? And what if we try this? Like I can quote unquote lead that crew. I mean, I'm not a general contractor, but in that very limited way, I'm just looking for an analogy. The short version is that I'm good at telling people what to do if I'm the master of a project. If it's like my project and I own it and I can have people and I can sort of keep them on task, that I actually can do. What I don't do well is the different kind of collaboration that we have in the management of this studio, not within the studio, but in the management of the studio. Can you flesh that out any, Sean? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but it is different. I can do it, just the style is so different.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't quite right, because it's just not like Johnny and I had a great collaboration when we were collaborated. We just didn't have the results that we could have had if we were treating it right, and we were in the right spots. So this isn't quite right at all before I even say it. But Johnny has to call the shots. So in our relationship, it wasn't like that. Johnny didn't have to call the shots, but I'm also super malleable. I don't ever have to call the shots. And so it doesn't really matter who I'm working with. I can kind of bend to their preference, because I think that's what makes me a very natural collaborator. So Dave wouldn't have necessarily collaborated with anybody, and Johnny wouldn't have. And I think our studio is filled with people who wouldn't necessarily collaborate if this connective tissue hadn't been created. And there's like this safe space where we can all collaborate at the way that feels most natural and fun for us.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to beat a dead horse. Go ahead.
I think for me, for a long time, I didn't want to collaborate with anybody. I didn't see any need. Also didn't trust people. Like, I thought they were going to steal my idea, because like one time in either middle school or high school, I wrote this story and I showed this kid, and he wasn't even a writer. And like 2 days later, he shows up and he rewrote my story, and he's like telling everyone it's his. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? So
man, somebody hurts Dave one time, and it's just like, well, I'm not doing that.
All people are evil.
He heard that rewriting is writing.
So but also, like, I'm way too precious about my story, and like people I did talk to, they weren't necessarily writers, but like they would suggest things like, no, I don't want to do that, like, no. So I think basically you got to find somebody that works well with your particular particularities or whatever, like somebody that you can with, that creative flow, and it works perfectly, and somebody that you're both kind of offering or filling in the gaps. Like one person might do one thing better with the other person. Like I might write, I get in characters' heads really well. Somebody else might write really descriptive scene that I'm not very good at. So stuff like that, I think. Like if you could divorce your ego from your own thing and work together and not worry about, who gets credit for what, like, oh, I thought of that's my idea.
Counting ideas is cancer to any collaboration for sure.
And I think if I had done it when I was younger, I might have been like that, because I was so eager for recognition for my brilliance. Like, so I think now, like, I don't need that the same. And like, if people wonder if it's Sean or if it's me, I don't care. I don't mind. It's us. So
yeah, something also that's awesome is so Dave and I have collaborated all this time, and I never really thought Dave would ably collaborate with another person. Like, I've wanted it for sure. I thought that'd be really cool. Dave has really good ideas, and I think that Dave is a better storyteller than a writer, which isn't a knock at his writing at all.
Hey,
it's but he is like an architect of, oh, this could happen and this could happen, and these are the characters it could happen to. And spending time on developing an actual story, I think, is more of a superpower for him than getting that story exactly on the page as it should be. And so it's nice to see Dave spreading the story wealth and taking other ideas and shaping them. And we've been collaborating with Joel, the three of us, for the last couple of weeks, and it's just been really, really awesome. And it's been fun to see this third element come into our marriage. We got polyamorous. We invited somebody else into the creative bedroom, but it's been really fun to watch Dave, because Dave has really learned to become more collaborative. And I bet you the results of what we're doing, it's going to be some of our best work ever because of that collaboration.
Dave, tell us about some of your collaborations and how they're different from one another, or the same.
Well, yeah, they're all different. And I think what's, sort of another pitfall, and maybe this is something that you see a little bit further down the road, but every collaboration is so different. I think if you enter into it with a process that you're not willing to be flexible with, then you're going to have problems. And that's even with the same people. Like, Zach and I've written the most with Zach, and our process has changed every single book. Now, not radically. I mean, we're not totally throwing out process and starting over, but it's completely different now than it was 3 years ago. And the way I wrote with Glenn James is very different than the way I wrote with Joanna Penn. And the way that we collaborate on these retreats and we create anthologies together. So I have to check myself because I'm very systems and process oriented. And when I get something locked in, I kind of just want to follow that. And I know that to a degree, you need that sort of structure. On the other hand, I think I have to get better at, and I'm aware of it, but of allowing people to grow within the collaboration and kind of change and kind of shift. And you know, there are even times where I've reversed roles with people in a collaboration, knowing it was my weakness, but because I thought I can't hold on to that process because then it's just me again. It's not collaboration if I'm not giving up a little bit. So I think, you know, most of the time, Johnny, I take the lead in the collaboration, whatever that means, and however, you know, that'll differ from one to another. But there are certain ones where I take the follower's role, and that's not a judgment on either one of those. I think you just have to recognize which role you need to fill and when, and then just do that to the best of your ability. But that's tough. It's hard to do because your ego gets in the way. You know, we all want our ideas, you know, we all want to have it our way at some level. But I think that the nature of collaboration is that that's not always going to be the case.
Do you find one more fun to engage in, but either being the leader or the follower?
It depends. I love being, I'm sort of an idea guy. And I think, Sean, I've always sort of thought I was sort of in the vein that you are in the role that you function with in your company. And that I like the big picture. I like to come up with the ideas. I like to create the framework. I'm not so excited about like showing up every day with the tools and building it, you know, but I do like coming up with the framework and the idea. So for me, that's where I'm really in my sweet spot. But I've also been the guy who said, okay, hand me the outline and I'm going to go write the first draft. And I think it's important to do different types of collaborations yourself, just so that you have some empathy for the people you work with if you tend to fall in one role or another.
The nature of leading and following is interesting to me here as I'm thinking through this, because for me, I think that is kind of the core thing, is that it's not that I need to call the shots, it's that I need to be one or the other, right? So either I'm in charge and I'm just in charge, like I am calling the shots, or I'm purely a follower. And what happened when Sean and I were trying to run the business together was, now this is not of our creative collaboration, I think it's as strong as ever, but as far as like a business collaboration, one of two things, we were always, I'm curious what your experience of this is, Sean, but it was almost like we were trying to steer the ship with two steering wheels. At least that's the way it somehow felt to me, because my nature isn't as naturally collaborative. That a lot of that may be on me. So like when we both needed to be rowing at the same time, that was hard because that's two people doing the same thing. So if we hand off, like right now, I think the reason our creative collaboration works so well is because when the outlining is happening, Sean's in charge and I defer to him, and we discuss ideas are fair game. Nobody's precious, but that's Sean's turn with the ball. And then when I get it and I have the draft, then it's my turn with the ball. And Sean would never insist, well, hold on, there's something in the draft here that you missed, dude. Like you're not following my blueprint. So then I get to do that. And then during revision, again, it's his. And so anything he wants to cut or change is fine. And it's that sort of awareness that like I either need to be in charge or not in charge at all. And trying to span that is what was so complicated for me.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I think, I mean, I was going to say when you started, no, I feel like there's one steering wheel and we weren't properly taking turns, but you're absolutely right, because it really was like competing steering wheels, or it was just like,
it's meta. It's like, who's going to take the steering wheel, right? Even if we were supposed to take turns, it was never really clear to me whose turn it was. That's what.
Yeah, because in creative stuff, there's an order of operations to everything. It goes outline, and then it goes draft, and then it goes edit. Like there's no question as to whose turn it is. But with business stuff, everything's happening concurrently. And so often I would, not that I was necessarily deferring to Johnny, but I'm not going to make unilateral decisions. Like if we're running the company together, that means that we have a conversation about pretty much everything. But yeah, Dave.
Well, I was just gonna wait till this wraps up, and I have a question. For
okay, well let me insert something, because you just raised something, Sean, that is exactly where I was going with that. But of course, I just forgot what it was. It was the last thing that you started to say about. Damn it! There are the two steering wheels and taking turns and shit. I can't remember what it was.
Riveting.
Yeah, it was riveting. Well, it was something that I was going to play off of directly, having to do. Oh, I know what it was. So the discussions about everything. So it's like everything in me is binary. I'm realizing this about myself as I get older. I have more self-realizations, and everything is binary. It's either on or off.
The kids are either on your lawn or off your lawn.
That's right. Get off my lawn. But if I'm in a partnership, then I'm in partnership mode, which means I'm not going to make unilateral decisions. And it's also doesn't really seem entirely right to let the other person make unilateral decisions. It feels like everything should be kind of a mini committee. And so I would always double clutch on anything where I was supposed to make a decision. I could have taken the ball and ran because, well, hold on, I didn't discuss all that stuff. We aren't truly making that decision, nor am I being assigned something. And so being in a partnership mode to me meant true parity in everything. And that's not really the way it's supposed to work. It's just sort of the way that my brain wants to make it work. And so right now the company is run, we have a brain trust. We have, a group of people, like Dave's on it, and obviously me and Sean and Neve and Bonnie. And so
still very much collaborative, but with a wider net.
Well, because right now, I mean, I don't know how you view this, but if I were in your shoes and I were running the company and I had the brain trust, I would go to the brain trust, I would discuss, I would get opinions, I would gather information, and then I would turn that off mentally, and I would then make the decision and move forward. So it would be gather opinions and then make my own decision. Whereas as a participant in the brain trust, but not the CEO or anybody in charge now, I'm in the opposite role. I can go to the brain trust and I can add my opinions knowing that it's not going to be my decision in the end. And so that model kind of works for me. But you are more naturally you're a little more fluid in that. Like you're able to kind of make a partnership decision in one way and then kind of make a unilateral one here. Like you're a little more fluid than I am in that way.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
So
that's a Dave. Yeah.
I want to ask Jay a two-part question. One, how do you
only get one part, Dave?
How do you find the right person to collaborate with as a writer or a new writer or even an old writer, someone's been doing it a while? How do you find the ideal person to write with, and what sorts of things do you look for in that person? Also, what sorts of things are like red flags, like, oh, this isn't going to work out?
Yeah, red flags, especially important.
Yeah, that's the number one question that Zach and I get. I'm sure you guys get that probably more than anything else too, is how do you find that person, right? I think for me, and it's just my experience, so this may not apply for other people, but I tend to need some type of relationship first. I need to be a friend. I need to be an acquaintance, maybe a business association of some sort. I'm not comfortable with the cold email invitation to collaborate. That's just not how I operate. So I always tell authors, well, you need to go where the people who you're interested in are. And I don't know where that is. Like, if let's say you're, really into Instagram and bookstagrammers, like, well, then you need to be fostering relationships on Instagram, and you need to forget Twitter, and you need to forget, whatever else. Like you need to know where they are. If the person, your ideal collaborator is someone who you think is like you, and you spend a lot of time in Facebook groups, then start in the Facebook groups, start reading other people's books. Like that's the number one thing. Like I'm sure you guys get this. I get pitched podcast guest spots and things all the time. And it's like, dear podcaster, on like the Horror Writers podcast, which hasn't had a new episode in like 4 years. I'm like, wow, you really did your homework,
Dear sir, ma'am.
Yeah. So I think like if you have to go where they are, and if you're like me, you're looking for people who have similar interests to you, because that's going to start that relationship most likely. But become a fan, or at least become familiar with their work, because the other thing you need to do is, like, if you're going to write with someone, you better know their style. You better have a sense of their voice. if you're doing it because you think the name on the cover is going to sell books, I tell you that is not going to work. I mean, unless it's James Patterson, it's not going to work. So, you really have to build that relationship first. The second part to that question, the red flags. So for me, again, this is highly personal, and I'm not judging other people, but if in the very beginning there's an email chain and that email chain is broken by the other person, that's kind of a no-brainer for me. That's like, yeah, this is not going to work, because I feel like in the honeymoon phase or the courting phase, if we're dancing and like we're getting to know each other and we're getting hot and heavy, and like you don't reply to an email that you should have like 3 weeks later, what's that tell me about what's going to happen when we get into the process and your ability to meet
So
deadlines?
You mean someone who just disappears?
Ghosts. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Or like, it's different if someone has a problem, or, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like someo's supposed to do
someone
something
with no communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Lack of communication is a major, major red flag. And I try not to give a lot of wiggle room on that early on, because I kind of feel like that's when people are on their best behavior. That's when we're all trying to please, we're trying to impress. And if at that stage you're coming up short, it's a pretty good indicator to me what's going to happen further down the road.
What if your collaborator constantly misses deadlines?
Oh, fuck you.
Do you just love them anyway?
I think it depends
Jay would
on
cut
the
me
collaborator.
loose.
I think if it's Dave, of course you love him, but anyone else, forget it.
All right, that seems fair.
I have an interesting thought experiment. So given everything that we've talked about conditions for collaborations and different kinds of collaborations, because I actually think I am a pretty interesting case, because I really am a loner, but I work really well with Sean creatively. And so I'm curious, what are the circumstances, if any, and it sounds like a joke, but I'm actually curious, under which Dave and I could collaborate on a book? Do they exist?
I think you could do, okay, that's actually a really good question. I've given it a lot of thought, and now I think I have a little more experience with which to answer it. I would say you could absolutely do it if it was world building, like we were going, so in the same way that when we built out The Inevitable, Joel got like the corner, of Oceana, because he could just do his own thing. If Dave had his own thing and you had his own thing, your own thing, yes. But I think in a true collaboration where we're making our stories work together, that's a much harder sell.
I'm thinking that I could create an outline. Dave could throw out the outline and rewrite the outline. I could ratify the outline. I could write the draft. Dave could throw out and rewrite the draft. And then I could work on Dave's draft. Dave could reverse all my changes, and then we'd be good.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of that, but
backing into it, I like that.
I do think that worked. I could see that collaboration happening.
I just peek in at every stage of his process and throw some wrench in the works.
So, who would be more of a control freak, me or Johnny, when it comes to that?
You're different. I don't
different kind of control freak.
Yeah, it's a different kind of control freak. It's that your styles aren't as malleable. Like I don't think that Johnny could be you, and I don't think that you could be Johnny, where I can flit in between easier. So part of it is stylistically. So we're collaborating with Joel right now, and Joel has very short sentences and short paragraphs and truncated thought in that same way. So it's a more consistent reader experience. It'd be harder to bridge that gap. So it's not just about control, but it's also that, yeah, I mean, Dave, you definitely want to go into your hole, and Johnny be like, well, aren't we supposed to talk about this?
Well, I mean, actually, in all seriousness, I think that as long as there wasn't much back and forth, at least from my perspective, and by back and forth, I mean checking work along the way or something, I actually think that from my perspective, if Dave gave me an outline, I could write that outline, and then he'd hate it, but I could do it. Or I think that in a scenario where I created outlines, which I don't normally, I think I could give Dave an outline and he could write the outline, but he might hate that too. But I think that from my perspective, as long as, because I think what would piss me off if we're talking about like ruining it is if I gave Dave a draft and he gave me back a whole bunch of reasons that it sucked. That I wouldn't like.
Yeah, okay. Here's what I think.
But if it just vanished, it might be okay.
If you guys actually had a collaboration, I do think that you could write to an outline that, like, Dave could come up with a story, And then
I'd complicate it and have all sorts of politics and shit in
right.
it.
He wouldn't like what you did with it, but you could write to one of his outlines for sure. If you wrote him an outline, he'd probably hate it. So I think that what's funny is I think as finished products, you guys would like a lot of the same things, but I think there would be a disconnect creatively.
Well, Dave and I are a lot more similar than I used to say. Like, I'm realizing that now. Like, we're a different kind of curmudgeon, but we're definitely both there.
And I also complicate things, so it'd be super complicated. It'd be like the most complicated book ever, probably.
Yeah, I'd complicate it in one incompatible way, and then you'd complicate it within that, and it would be like a Mobius.
This isn't better or worse, but it is very different in story approach. So I feel like we were talking about this last week, maybe, but Dave gets very concerned about things that aren't necessarily important to the reader, but they're important to Dave, and he's trying to communicate them.
Hey, when you wake up, you got to pee, and that scene has to be in a book.
Wait, but here's the thing.
And if that shit's justified,
Johnny does the same thing, but in a different way. It's in a different way. So Johnny will repeat things. He'll repeat things like, I want to make sure the reader knows this. It's very important to me that the reader knows this. And he'll say it in different ways, or one sentence, the same thing a couple of different times. Where with you, Dave, you're like, okay, this element is important to the reader. The reader needs to know. Okay, so for example, you'll mention that somebody is the reelected so-and-so 80 times in a book. Like you've got and the readers don't care about the politics behind it. They need a hint, and then you move on. But it's like, we all have that as writers. Like, these are the things that were important, but it's that ultimate trust to have somebody else go in. And I'm pretty confident on both your ends. When you read the final product of a book, you're not like, what's missing, right?
I've done that a number of times. I'm guessing you haven't read a lot of your own books, Dave, but I have, and I'm always pleased with the edits.
Yeah, I've read through.
It's like you can't really tell what's missing, or even maybe you could tell some of the changes, but mostly, it's just about.
Basically, if it says vapor or floral, whatever, then I know that Sean added that, but otherwise.
So I think that it's that like really deep level of trust, and I have that level of trust with Johnny, and I have that level of trust with Dave, and I don't know what it would take for you guys to develop that level of trust with each other. I think that's the missing ingredient there.
Maybe 10 more years we'll do one.
I got to collaborate on Dave with an act of violence or something. Like, it's just maybe not a book.
Well, I'd like to ask you guys something, because I know there aren't many people who have the collaboration history that you do, especially in the indie circles. And maybe this is a bit of a paradox, but do you guys go through phases where you don't want to collaborate, or you're sick of the role that you're in? And if you hit those phases, how do you get out of them?
Well, I'll go first. No. I mean, I'm a collaborator by nature again, right? So I'm
collaborator, naughty.
Yeah, I have 3 primary collaborations right now. Johnny, Dave, and then Bonnie, and then I collaborate a little bit with everybody in some capacity in the studio. So I really like that, and I think that there's enough variety built in there already that I'm always going to be able to do, fun things. And I feel like it's absorbing superpowers, because everyone that I work with teaches me something as long as I'm paying attention. And, working with a lot of people in the studio and just being aware of that kind of constant ideation it's, I think, making me better at what I do. So I don't have the chance to get bored with it.
Well, are you fulfilling the same role in all of those collaborations?
No.
Okay. So like if you were fulfilling the same role.
Absolutely. Okay. I would be really bored really fast, but that's part of like, I think what makes the studio work and all their collaborations is because my brain is always hungry for that. So I kind of built,
I do fill the same role in all of our collaborations. I do, but it's the role that I like. But to answer the question, I actually do have a series that I write on my own. I don't know that counts as being bored, but it does mean that there's that extra, that's a piece of me that needs feeding as well. And so I do like to have, even if it weren't books or whatever, but I do like to have something that I'm in control from A to Z, just because that is sort of a natural mode for me. But within the books, it feels that way during the draft anyway. Like the beginning to the end of a book is a long endeavor, and that feels like a project that I am captaining for the entire time that I'm working on the draft.
I don't get bored of it. I get overwhelmed when like when we have bigger story meetings and there's a bunch of people, and it's hard for me to keep my own shit in my head and all the worlds that I got going on, and then other people. So that's a bit overwhelming for me. So I don't know that I could do that a lot. But as far as working with Sean, no, I'm never bored. As far as doing things alone, the only thing that, you know, I have a desire to do alone are, you know, comic strips that, you know, I used to do for a long time. And that's like a different creative itch that I don't scratch. So that's like in the back of my head, like, oh, I want to do this thing, but it's nothing to do with collaboration. So no.
Yeah, I don't think I ever get bored of it. For me, it's a feeling of like, it's this weird paradox where I'm like, okay, I want to be in charge. And then I'm in charge of like 3 or 4 collaborations in a row. And I'm like, fuck this, man. Can somebody else take control here? And like, I want to be a follower. And then I get into the follower seat, and then I get the itch like, okay, I want to be in charge again. And I kind of go back and forth between those.
Well, that sounds like a good mix, actually. So.
Yeah, it works as long as you don't piss off your collaborators.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that is real common in our studio that I actually am not into that much is sharing worlds. So I thought I would dig this more, but I like it in a big picture concept. So when Sean was talking about the inevitable world, we got together and we broke out stories for a lot of people in the world. And that I loved. That was amazing. That was great. What I don't like is like I want to be I want to be the first steps in the snow. And once somebody else has put some footsteps across my path, then it's no more fun. So trying to go back, there was something, I don't remember what it was, if it was Invasion or what, where I had to be mindful of other things that people contributed. Invasion. Yeah. So people had written a bunch of stuff between when we finished our series and when we wrote another series in the same world. And that was like, well, hold on.
Y'all fucked my world up, man.
Yeah, I have to fact check against this or that. Like usually that's blue sky creation for me. And like I could see being in the middle of a draft and being like, well, we've never mentioned the president, but man, it really makes sense to have a king. Like I'm making that up. We didn't do that. But then if it's like I have to stop and think, well, hold on a second, somebody already made a president and here's their name and here's how something works. So I do like the tabula rasa of just create the blank page. I'm just creating something from scratch. And I know a lot of people really, really love that, coming into a shared world, and that's already been sort of pioneered. Not my bag as much. Okay, so when everybody goes silent, I guess that basically means it's done. Any final thoughts on collaboration before we wrap it all up?
Well, I mean, we did talk about the hiccups, so maybe we can end on Jay talking about what's the biggest thing that you've gotten from it. I love watching Dave scratch his back too. Every episode is so.
Oh yeah, because if you guys can't see it on YouTube, he's literally using a back scratcher. It's not
he
just
really gets into it too. He's like, oh, fucking scabies! Get off there.
Got a snake on the end, like something out of a horror movie. Yeah.
I hate you.
It's basically a big spackle knife taped to a stick.
Well, I think for me, like aside from the obvious stuff that everyone knows about collaboration, and that, you know, you can produce more work, maybe you can even do it a little bit faster than you could by yourself. But for me, I kind of have some selfish motivations too. I feel like every person I collaborate with, I learn so much about storytelling and craft and voice and dialogue and everything. And I find that after every collaboration, I start to inherit some of those skills, and it shows up again in my own writing. So I think for me, as someone who's constantly reading books on craft and studying story, collaboration is just another lens on the world. So I think that's a great benefit to collaboration that a lot of people don't even consider in the beginning.
I've seen that from you too, dude. Like I've seen a few times where it almost seems like you want to learn something, and so you get into a collaboration with somebody to learn it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you close off by telling us what you're doing next, what you want people to know about, anything like that?
Yeah, I guess that, you know, the easiest thing to do, I guess, for me would be if people want to go to superchargeyourscene.com. I'm starting a free 5-day challenge in a few weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Superchargeyourscene.com.
Superchargeyourscene.com. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a free writing challenge, and that's probably it. I don't bother with the social media and all that bullshit. I'm not going to give you a list of sites and books to buy. Just if you're interested, you want to know more about me, that's a great place to start.
When does the challenge begin?
Starts on June 15th, 2020.
Okay. I don't know if this airs before then, but I think it might, and that would be good. I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. I don't know. I don't keep track of things. I'm not collaborative anymore.
Hey, if it doesn't, just Google me if you're curious.
Right. JThorn, as in the initial J.
Right, J.Thorn. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on. Thanks everybody for listening. Sean, remember you have the cutoff this time.
Yeah.
Remember this? It's all thing.
Mission Control. Here we go.
Okay, Mission Control. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Adios.